is Peter August, and I'll be delivering this presentation on behalf of a number of colleagues who have worked very hard to make the Coastal Institute demonstration site project happen. I'll be introducing them momentarily, but let me give a quick shout out to two people who have developed the concept of the demonstration site project and who work tirelessly behind the scenes to make that happen. That's Judith Swift, the director of the URI Coastal Institute, and Amber Neville, who's our digital media communication specialist. Without the work of these two people, I would have nothing to say today. They've been key members. Climate change impacts are here and now in Rhode Island. We're already seeing the effects of climate change here in the Ocean State. The purpose of the demonstration site project is to identify communities and areas where innovative solutions are being developed in collaborative ways to deal with projected sea level rise impacts, to identify gaps in our knowledge, to fill those gaps, and to get word out of best management practices to deal with this. We have 3 demonstration sites in Rhode Island. Our natural areas, the Napa Tree Point Conservation Area, off the coast of Westerly. You'll be hearing a lot about this in a moment. Our mixed use areas in Barrington and Warren in the northern part of Narragansett Bay, heavily developed residential and commercial, some natural areas mixed in too, and both of these communities are very low elevation. The third is our working waterfront in Providence, our urban area site, and nearby Roger Williams Park. And here's a quick map of our the location of our 3 demonstration sites. Let me start with the Napa Tree Point Conservation Area. This is truly a collaborative project. Napa Tree is managed by the Watch Hill Conservancy, which owns a conservation easement over the property, which is owned by the Watch Hill Fire District. Faculty and students from the University of Rhode Island and Eastern Connecticut State University are heavily involved in monitoring and management programs on Napa Tree. So it's really taken a large team to deal with the management issues that we have. A little bit of geography. Napa Tree is a pristine barrier spit system, 34 hectares, an area almost 2 kilometers long, very low elevation. The land is owned by the fire district, managed by the Conservancy, and heavily used in the summertime. We can get 900 people on our beach on a busy summer day, 400 boats at anchor along our northern shore. It's a big challenge for us is keeping Napa Tree from being loved to death. Look on the right side of this slide. This is Napa Tree now. It's a Audubon Society globally important bird area. It's part of the John Chafee U.S. Fish and Wildlife System Coast and Barrier Reserve System. It's a pristine barrier spit, arguably one of the most pristine spits this side of Cape Cod. It's incredibly important for migratory birds, both in the spring and the fall. It's a biodiversity hotspot. It hasn't always been like this. Prior to 1938, there were 39 homes lining the spine of Napa Tree. In these 2 older pictures on the left, you can see those homes in the top one. The arrow points to a short jetty going out into the ocean. Hurricane of 38 wiped Napa Tree clean. Every one of the structures on Napa Tree washed into Little Narragansett Bay. The slate was wiped clean. The Watch Hill Fire District purchased the property so it could be set aside as a nature reserve. Napa Tree is storm driven. It's a very resilient system, as we just discovered on the last slide. 80 years after the Hurricane of 38, it's a biodiversity hotspot. It's always changing. It's a very dynamic system, and it's heavily used and appreciated by the community. Our management goals: let nature have its way. Make sure that natural ecosystem processes can occur. We have a large number of rare and endangered species that use Napa Tree. We need to protect those. And it's important to us that this be a public resource, and as much as we can, we educate the public as to the value that Napa Tree brings. We know that one of the climate change impacts that we can expect are more intense, frequent storms. Hold that thought. Prior to Superstorm Sandy, we had 64 trails crossing Napa Tree. Visitors going from bay to ocean would walk willy-nilly through the dunes. These trails encompassed almost 2.5 miles. During Superstorm Sandy, we had 8 breaches of Napa Tree, creating washover fans at each one of these 8 sites. Each one of these sites was on a crossover trail. Since then, we've reduced the number of approved trails down to 8. In the process, we've reclaimed almost 1.5 acres of dune system, and we get 100% compliance of people walking from bayside to the ocean side. The washover fans that were so conspicuous after Superstorm Sandy were invisible the following spring and summer because the root and rhizomes underneath those washover plumes pushed their sprouts up and the vegetation thrived. So we've done a lot of plant restoration on our closed social trails using species that bring value to pollinators and migrants and that develop dense root and rhizome mats, hopefully helping make Napa Tree a little bit more resilient to future storms where we get washover fans. Napa Tree is very dynamic. Dr. Oakley at Eastern Connecticut State University monitors dune height every quarter with a RTK GPS, and this way we're able to track the deposition and accretion of sand over time. Brian has found that it's taken 5 years to fully recover from the dune erosion that Superstorm Sandy caused. Since 1939, Napa Tree has migrated 1 full width north into Little Narragansett Bay. The significance of this issue for us is historically we've used dune fencing to manage the flow of people. Dune fencing traps sand. Well, we now know that we want sand to flow where sand wants to flow to accommodate dune dynamics, and so now we use split rail fencing, which is aesthetically beautiful. People understand that you don't go on the other side of the split rail fencing and sand can move through it. So another example of management to allow naturally occurring ecosystem processes. All of this happens while we monitor for change and educate our visitors and youth to the importance of these systems and best coastal stewardship practices. Let me change gears and let's talk about the mixed-use areas, Barrington and Warren. Again, we have a big team working on this. Charlie Roman, Judah Swift, Amber Neville, Nate Vinatero, and Teresa Crean from URI. And leadership from both the town of Warren and the town of Barrington. These are very densely developed low-lying areas, and we have determined that they're extremely vulnerable to sea level rise and storm events. A full 44% of all residential and commercial structures in town would be inundated with a modest 25-year storm with 5 feet of sea level rise. Very vulnerable. The issues aren't coming up in the future, they're here now. Nuisance tides are an ongoing issue. Our salt marshes aren't keeping up with sea level rise, and the town of Warren has already had to spend $20 million to fortify their wastewater treatment system to accommodate 3 feet of sea level rise. Step 1 of the work happening here was to understand the nature of the problem. Get our arms around the tools available to map and assess risk. Present this information to the town leadership, present this information to the town residents, and share this information with the community at large. Then came the hard part. How do we deal with it? And so this has been a long series of meetings and workshops with community leadership and the public to figure out what the best resolutions might be to the sea level rise and surge threats that we see coming down the pike. One vulnerability that became instantly clear was the vulnerability of our transportation system to big storms. This is a tough issue to crack. There are no cheap solutions, there's no simple solutions, and the group is working on it right now. A real asset to our work in Barrington and Warren have been some student projects from UPenn and URI who've brought a lot of creative, innovative thinking into the mix on how these communities might deal with sea level rise and storm surge. The last area that I'll briefly mention, there's just not enough time to go into, is the work that Austin Becker and Art Gold are doing in the working waterfront Port of Providence, which is a major regional node for the delivery of heating, fuel, and gasoline, and Roger Williams Park, a short distance away from the Port of Providence, which is the primary exposure to nature that a lot of underprivileged, underserved inner city resident gets. And Roger Williams Park has issues with stormwater runoff and water quality. And so Austin and Art are doing some terrific work there. One of the fundamental goals of our project was to work collaboratively. The issues are too big for any one group to take on, and at Napa Tree and our mixed-use site, we've been very successful in bringing together a wonderful group of partners to deal with these. So thank you for giving me your time. I look forward to answering any questions you might have in the question answer period. We'll have members of our team signed on, so I hope you jot down a couple of questions and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Okay, that concludes my presentation.